The family dinner was supposed to celebrate my sister Elena's engagement. Instead, it turned into another opportunity for my father to remind me of my inadequacy. "So, Jordan," Dad said, cutting into his steak. "Still working at that little collection agency?" I was 28 years old, sitting across from my parents at a restaurant that cost more per plate than most people's weekly groceries. A restaurant they'd charged to one of the 7 credit cards I knew were maxed out. "Yes," I said simply. "Still there." "Such a shame," Mom added, sipping her 3rd glass of wine. "All that education and you're basically a telemarketer harassing people for money." Elena smirked beside her fiancé, Bradley. "At least Jordan has a steady job. Unlike that ridiculous entrepreneur phase." They all laughed. The entrepreneur phase had been my failed business attempt at 23. My family never let me forget it. What they didn't know was that I'd learned everything from that failure. "How much are you making now?" Dad asked. "Still around 60,000? That's basically poverty in this city." "Something like that," I said, taking a sip of water. "You'll never be rich with that salary, son. You should have gone into finance like Bradley here. He's pulling in 400,000. Bradley preened. Elena beamed. My parents nodded approvingly. I smiled and said nothing. What they didn't know was that I wasn't an employee at Titan Recovery Solutions. I was the owner. I'd bought the struggling collection agency 3 years ago for $200,000, restructured it completely, and turned it into one of the most efficient debt recovery operations in the Northeast. Last year's revenue, $14.7 million. My personal net worth, $8.3 million. I'd kept it quiet. Used my middle name, Jordan Blake instead of Jordan Westfield, on all business documents. Maintained a modest apartment and drove a 7-year-old Honda. Turned out silence had been my best strategy. "Maybe you should ask your sister and Bradley for career advice," Mom suggested. "They're going places. You're just stuck." My phone buzzed. A notification from my company's automated debt tracking system. Alert: high priority accounts Westfield, Michael and Patricia, total debt, $847,392.18, status, 180+ days delinquent. My parents' names. I looked up at them, still laughing, still drinking expensive wine, still radiating the confidence of people who believed they were untouchable. They had no idea their debt had just been sold to my company. "Actually," I said quietly, "I'm doing fine. Better than fine." Dad waved dismissively. "Sure, son. Whatever helps you sleep at night." I smiled. "I sleep very well. Thanks for asking." Hold up. I'd spent my entire childhood being compared to Elena. She was 3 years older, prettier, more charming. She'd gone to Yale. I'd gone to a state school. She'd landed a job through Dad's connections. I'd graduated into the recession and scrambled for any work I could find. When I'd gotten a job at a debt collection agency, my parents had been mortified. "Our son, the bill collector," Mom told her friends. They'd never asked what I actually did. Never showed interest in my work. They just assumed I was a low-level employee cold calling debtors from a cubicle. In reality, I'd started as a collections specialist, but quickly realized the industry was ripe for disruption. Most agencies operated with outdated technology, aggressive tactics that generated lawsuits, and terrible compliance protocols. I'd spent 2 years learning everything: the regulations, the psychology, the technology, the legal framework. Then I'd approached the owner of Titan Recovery Solutions, a 68-year-old man ready to retire, and offered to buy him out. Within 3 months we had a deal: $200,000 down, financed through my savings and a small business loan, with payments over 5 years from company profits. 3 years later, I'd paid off the loan and grown the company's revenue by 600%. My parents had no idea. Saturday morning I arrived at my office, a sleek space in a downtown high-rise. My VP of Operations, Sarah Martinez, was already at her desk. "Morning, boss," she said. "Did you see the new account portfolio?" I saw. "How many accounts total?" 247. Total debt value, $18.3 million. She pulled up a spreadsheet. "There's one account that flagged our system, Westfield, Michael and Patricia. Over $800,000 in combined debt." "I know," I said. "They're my parents." Sarah's eyes widened. "Your what?" "My parents. They've been living beyond their means for years. I've watched it happen. The luxury cars, the country club membership, the vacations. All on credit. What do you want to do? I sat down and pulled up their file. It was worse than I'd thought. 7 maxed out credit cards, $340,000. 2 personal loans, $180,000. Home equity line of credit, $250,000. Unpaid property taxes, $77,392. Total, $847,392.18. All of it at least 6 months overdue. All of it now owned by my company. Process them like any other account, I said. Send the initial contact letter. 30-day notice of debt. Standard protocol. Jordan, they're your family. They're debtors who've defaulted on nearly $1 million. We treat everyone equally. That's our company policy. Monday morning the letters went out. Certified mail, return receipt required. My phone rang at 11:47 a.m. Jordan, we got some ridiculous letters today from a debt collection agency. Titan something. Obviously a scam. Can you look into it? Titan Recovery Solutions? Yes. They're claiming we owe $800,000. Absolute nonsense. We pay our bills. I pulled up their account. 7 bounced payments in the last 4 months. 19 missed payments over the past year. Dad, if they sent you a letter, it's probably legitimate. You should call them. It's obviously a mistake. We're just going to ignore it. That's not a good idea. Ignoring debt collection notices can lead to legal action. We have lawyers. Good ones. Lawyers cost money. We're not like you struggling to get by. We have resources. I looked at their account summary. 3 months from foreclosure. 2 months from vehicle repossession. If you say so, Dad. Tuesday Elena called. Jordan, Mom and Dad are freaking out about these debt collection letters. Can you help them? I suggested they contact the agency. But it's clearly a scam, right? $800,000. Is it? They drive a Mercedes and a Range Rover. They belong to a country club. They vacation in Europe twice a year. Where do you think that money comes from? Silence. Elena, they're broke. They've been living on credit for years. That's not true. Dad said they're financially secure. Dad is 6 months behind on his mortgage and has maxed out 7 credit cards. You're just jealous because they're successful and you're not. She hung up. Wednesday, my collections team sent the second notice. More formal, with detailed debt breakdowns and a clear timeline. Failure to respond within 14 days will result in legal proceedings including asset seizure, wage garnishment, and potential foreclosure. Thursday morning, Mom called crying. Jordan, these people are threatening to take our house. You have to help us. Mom, you need to contact them directly. Set up a payment plan. We don't have the money for payments. Then you shouldn't have maxed out 7 credit cards. How dare you? We're your parents. I'm showing you reality. You owe almost $1 million. That debt doesn't disappear because you're offended by it. She hung up sobbing. Revelation. Friday afternoon, my legal team filed preliminary court documents. My phone rang. Dad screaming. We're being sued. By that collection agency. Jordan, you have to do something. Are you good for the money? We'll figure it out. We just need time. Time for what? You're already at the limit of your borrowing capacity. Your credit score is below 500. We have equity in the house. I pulled up the property records. Your house is worth $650,000. You owe $580,000 on the primary mortgage and $250,000 on the home equity line. You're underwater by $180,000. Silence. How do you know that? He asked quietly. Because I'm not stupid. And neither is the collection agency. You have to help us, Jordan. Talk to your boss. I don't think that's going to help. Why not? As I am the boss, Dad. I own Titan Recovery Solutions. I'm the CEO and majority shareholder. And you owe my company $847,392.18. The silence lasted so long I thought he'd hung up. What? He finally whispered. I bought the company 3 years ago. I've built it into a $14 million business. I'm not poor, Dad. I'm a multimillionaire. I just let you think I was struggling because you never bothered to ask. You, you own the company? Yes. And your debt was sold to my company last week. I've been processing your account all week. You're collecting from your own parents? I'm collecting from debtors who defaulted on nearly $1 million. The fact that you're my parents doesn't change the legal reality. Elena. I heard him scream. Get over here. Now. Commotion, then Elena's voice on speaker. Jordan, what the hell is going on? I own the debt collection agency that's suing mom and dad. They owe my company $847,000. You own the company? Yes. I've owned it for 3 years. Revenue last year was $14.7 million. That's impossible. You're a low-level employee. That's what you assumed. I never said that. You just never asked. Mom's voice joined in, shrill and panicked. You have to stop this. We're your family. You're debtors who defaulted on nearly $1 million. I treat all my accounts equally. We'll pay you back. Dad insisted. With what money? Your credit cards are maxed. Your mortgage is in default. You have $4,000 in your checking account and $77,000 in unpaid property taxes. How do you know all this? Mom screamed. Because it's my job to know. This is what debt collection agencies do. We analyze financial situations. And yours is catastrophic. Elena's voice. You're really going to sue your own parents? They're really going to default on nearly $1 million in debt. Actions have consequences. You're a monster. I'm a businessman. There's a difference. I hung up. Resolution. The lawsuit proceeded exactly as planned. My legal team filed for asset seizure, wage garnishment, and foreclosure proceedings. My parents hired an expensive attorney they couldn't afford. He reviewed the case and told them what I'd already said. The debt was real, the documentation was ironclad, and they had no defense. He suggested bankruptcy. They refused. 3 months later, judgment was entered in favor of Titan Recovery Solutions for the full amount plus interest and legal fees. $923,847.67. Their house went into foreclosure. Their cars were repossessed. Their bank accounts were frozen and emptied. My parents, who'd spent 30 years sneering at my poverty, were now genuinely broke. They moved into a small apartment in Queens. Dad had to get a part-time job at 63. Mom sold her jewelry on eBay. Elena stopped speaking to me. She sent one final text. I hope you're happy. You destroyed our family over money. I replied, they destroyed themselves. I just documented it. The family fell apart. Aunts and uncles who'd watched my parents mock me for years suddenly had opinions about my cruelty. Not one of them offered to help pay the debt. 6 months after the judgment, I was featured in Crane's New York business. Young entrepreneur builds $20 million debt recovery empire. The article mentioned that I'd personally recovered nearly $1 million from my own parents, demonstrating unprecedented professional integrity and commitment to equal treatment under the law. The business community loved it. My family sent death threats. 1 year later, my company's revenue hit $28 million. I sold a 30% stake to a private equity firm for $15 million. My personal net worth crossed $30 million. I bought a penthouse in Tribeca with floor-to-ceiling windows. I drove a Tesla. I wore custom suits. I lived exactly the life my parents had always pretended to live. Except mine was real. I received one letter from my father. 3 pages detailing how I'd failed as a son. How I'd embarrassed them. How I'd destroyed their lives. The final paragraph, you'll never be happy. Money can't buy love or respect. You've lost your family forever. Was it worth it? I read it once, then filed it away. Was it worth it? I thought about the decades of mockery. The dismissal of my achievements. The casual cruelty disguised as concern. I thought about them maxing out credit cards to maintain appearances while calling me poor. Yes, it was worth it. 2 years after the judgment, I established the Westfield Financial Literacy Foundation, a nonprofit teaching low-income families about debt management and credit repair. I named it after my parents. Not as a tribute but as a warning. Their legacy wouldn't be their fake wealth. It would be a foundation teaching people not to make their mistakes. I never spoke to my parents again. Never visited. Never answered their calls. 5 years after buying Titan Recovery Solutions, I sold the company for $85 million. I was 33 and worth over $60 million. I started a venture capital firm focusing on fintech and financial education startups. One evening, I was featured on Bloomberg TV discussing financial literacy. The host asked about my background. I started in debt collection, I said. I learned that most people don't understand debt until it destroys them. My own parents were a perfect example. They lived beyond their means for decades and ended up losing everything. Did you try to help them? I tried to collect the debt they owed. That was my job. They refused to acknowledge reality until it was too late. That must have been difficult. It was necessary. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is force people to face consequences. The interview went viral. I received thousands of messages, half calling me inspirational, half calling me a monster. I didn't care either way. I'd learned the most important lesson. Success isn't about what people think of you. It's about what you build when they're not watching. My parents thought I was poor while I was building an empire. They mocked my small salary while I was accumulating millions. They dismissed my career while I was buying the company that would eventually destroy them. And when they finally understood who I really was, it was too late to matter. That I pulled out my phone and looked at the last text from my father, sent 3 years ago. "You'll never be rich." I finally replied, "I'm richer than you ever were. The difference is mine is real." Then I blocked the number and went back to work.